Hello, my name is S. Robert Westman. I'm a spider writer. This time I thought I might use the camera instead of recording the Google Doc. I think it might just look better. This is my second piece I've made. It's Githard, the Paladin of Blizzards, Chapter One. I call this chapter the Grit of Fresh Silver. It's a shorter chapter, but because it's much older, and so I'm going to get into it now. I remember life in the desert, hot, arid, and unforgiving. The only comfort I had was the cold wetness of a cave and the night sky. The desert breeds harsh people as much as I came to loathe that place. Grit and determination may have never achieved the height it does now. But I won't return to those scorching sands any time soon. Githard awoke. The sand beneath his feet was cold, unforgiving. It felt so pleasant to him, natural. It never burned his feet like the blazing sand outside did. Paired with the merciless and unyielding sun and the dry, arid air that felt like dragon nails against his lungs. He was safe from the world here, in this cobbled together home in the parted walls of a saturated cavern. He lived here, him and his mother, feeding themselves on the unappetizing moss that littered the cavern floor in the cold and safe darkness, and they drank from the unsanitary water that sat in the pool underneath their feet. This crevice was his home. The young dragonborn, only 7 in age, raised from the ripped cloth that he had barely called a blanket. Scooping a handful of water into his mouth and began to head he scooped a handful of water into from his mouth and began to head out for his work. He was dirty, barely a shower given barely he had barely got a shower to him in weeks before he lived here. He had brought he had bright shining scales that blended into gold as they got closer to the edge of his limbs. That silver was now turned grey, coated in sand and dried blood. His golden hands and legs now looked like mustard in colour. His palms and soles of his feet would usually be soft, were covered in sores and calluses, ones you would see on hard-working dock workers that had been in their job for 2 decades, and he barely was a decade old himself. He was a slave, sold into it by his mother. She was no use to them. She was unhealthy, and she spent the days wailing, sobbing for either what she did or chanted a name Gither didn't recognize or understand. She was skinny, too skinny, literally down to her bones. Her golden scales never shone brightly as they did when he was but a toddler. There was that's the only memory he has of those times. Her hopeful smile and the pride that swelled into her eyes as she gazed upon him, and the glinting sparkles that blessed her scales. All of these were gone from her now. He also remembers scorching fire and the sweet caress of ice, and then a putrid smell that burned his nostrils. He hasn't smelled anything that distinct and painful before, but it tasted like death and rotted flesh. His days were long and boring for a child, spending many hours shoveling a trench line along what his owners called a town. It was a collection of scrapped together houses of different slaves, packed tight with the sand. They were barely even hovels. This was just another line of defense the guards would use, letting the slaves take the blunt of any attack from the butchers or raiders or scavengers that prowl these desolate dry lands. The guards would only intervene if the losses of the labor affected the progress of shoring up their defenses or ex- evacuating, extracting, despite despite how his mother was incapacitated from wailing and crying. She gave him one rule before she was in this state: to never participate in violence whatsoever. Though merely a boy, the dragonborn hated that rule. Will his mother have him waste his life as a slave? To only be a tool to be used to the whim of others, and to be beaten even though all he wanted to was to rest from the severe toil, the work upon his childish hands? Was this the rest of his life? The blizzard that bellowed in his veins, that bellowed in his heart, to rebel, to strike down his oppressors, to spit in their faces as if he couldn't do anything, to be defiant no matter the cost. Though merely a child, there was no question that this life he had molded him into a boy who lacked fear and burned ferocity into his core. There was a woman who did look out for the dragon wormling. Genast Venfermo was a fire genast. She was captured and placed into slavery after a failed rebellion with her fellow rebels. She hated this place, how it functioned, how careless it was with life. It was a slum city at best of times, a hell most of the time. And here amongst the older men and women was this little dragon, tenacious in nature, working alongside them. When she feared the child might react out of impulse and get himself a beating, she would distract them, sing sing a song or telling him stories that tell him stories of power and legends of paladins and the glory they achieved. She told him that he had dragon blood coursing through his veins, and he would make a great paladin as long as he stuck to the lessons she taught him: kindness above all, strength to protect the weak, to inspire others to do deeds of good. She hoped she hoped the lessons she taught him would temper his bitter rage and turn him into a fine lad. That's the smile that was placed on her lips when smile that was placed on his lips when she spoke. The young and dragonborn felt as if they had grown into siblings, despite the lack of blood relations. Janast always treated him like a small brother, scale brother. She called him over the years, seeing how strong and brave the child became over the next 8 years, gave the Genesis great sorrow, but also a tremendous joy. The boy will be a great warrior, but would that just make him a prize slave in their master's army, or perhaps gain his freedom at the cost of becoming the oppressor? She would perish at that thought. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's kind of short and sweet. That's really all. Sorry, I made a few mistakes there when I was reading. I think I it's an older piece, so I just have to like fix some stuff. I kind of should have looked through it before I recorded. I kind of got a bit excited for this recording, anyways. That's about it. See ya.